The first hint of trouble came in the form of thunder, deep, rolling, and far too early in the morning for comfort. Matthew was hiking the high ridges above his remote mountain cabin, the same path he'd walked for years. Mist clung to the treetops, the valley below still shrouded in night's shadow. He was searching for fresh mushrooms for breakfast when something unusual caught his eye, a sharp, metallic glint from the edge of a rocky ledge. Curious, he approached, and froze. There, trapped in a tangle of fallen branches and twisted wire, lay a massive golden eagle. Its wings, normally a glorious span of brown and gold, were crumpled and pinned awkwardly against its body. One leg was caught in what looked like a homemade snare. The bird's eyes blazed with both pain and defiance. It thrashed weakly, the hooked beak clicking in warning. Matthew's stomach knotted. Eagles were dangerous, their talons could crush bone in an instant, but leaving it here meant certain death. Worse, he saw that the feathers around its leg were dark with dried blood. And then, just as he leaned closer, he noticed something that turned the situation from urgent to desperate. Her crop, the part of the throat where a bird stores food, was sunken flat. She hadn't eaten in days. If she had chicks in a nest somewhere, they'd be starving too. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. Storm clouds were building fast. He didn't have long. Matthew crouched low, talking in a calm voice, though his heart pounded like a war drum. "Easy, easy there," he murmured, as if the eagle could understand. The bird flared her wings at the sound, hissing. Instinct told him to back off, but the memory of a nest, possibly full of hungry chicks, anchored his resolve. The wire trap was twisted deep into her leg feathers, and every time she struggled, it bit deeper. Without a tool, he'd never free her. He dug through his backpack, pulling out his multi-tool. The rain began to fall in cold, stinging sheets. Kneeling in the mud, he slowly reached for the wire. She snapped her beak dangerously close to his fingers. One wrong move, and she could tear a tendon from his hand. Then the thunder cracked overhead, startling both of them. She froze, just for a moment, and Matthew seized the chance. He clamped the wire in the cutter and snipped once, twice. The last strand gave way, and her leg was free. But she didn't fly. It was then he saw why: the wing. A section of the primary feathers was bent unnaturally, and blood seeped from a gash along the bone ridge. She wouldn't survive the storm like this. Without thinking, Matthew wrapped her carefully in his waterproof jacket, keeping the talons angled away from him. She fought weakly, but exhaustion quickly overcame her. The trail back to the cabin was slick and steep, and each step felt heavier with the weight of the bird, and the urgency pressing on his mind. By the time he reached home, lightning was crawling across the sky like veins of white fire. Inside, he laid her on a thick towel near the wood stove. She watched him with unblinking eyes, every muscle coiled in suspicion. Matthew cleaned the wound on her wing with warm water, his hands steady from years of first aid training in the military. The gash wasn't deep enough to break bone, but infection was the real threat. When he finished, she tucked her head under her wing and trembled. That night, the storm raged outside. He barely slept, listening to her slow, ragged breathing. By morning, she was still alive, and her eyes burned brighter. But there was no time to celebrate. If she had a nest, he needed to find it now. Matthew left her resting and hiked toward the cliffs where eagles nested. The climb was brutal, wet stone, loose shale, and the sheer drop of the valley yawning beneath him. After 2 hours, he spotted it, a massive nest wedged high in a rock crevice, nearly invisible unless you knew where to look. Inside, 3 chicks huddled together, their downy heads bobbing weakly. One gave a pitiful, raspy cry. They were starving. Climbing up to the nest would be suicide, so Matthew did something insane. He lay flat against the ledge below and called, mimicking the female's high-pitched whistle. Nothing. Then, he pulled a strip of rabbit meat from his pack, he'd brought it on instinct, and held it up. One chick stretched its neck toward the scent. Then another. Carefully, he reached up and placed the meat on the ledge. The boldest chick snatched it and swallowed greedily. It took nearly an hour of patience and careful feeding, but eventually, all 3 chicks ate their fill. He made the trip twice more that day, leaving food until they were stronger. Back at the cabin, the eagle eyed him as he entered. He placed a fish on the floor. She stared, then took it in her beak. That was the moment Matthew knew she understood, he was not her enemy. Over the next week, her strength returned. She began standing on her perch, flexing her wings in slow, testing motions. The first time she let him clean her wound without a fight, he felt a surge of hope. When the day came, she stood at the open doorway, feathers ruffled in the breeze. She looked at him one last time, a long, unblinking gaze, and launched into the air. Matthew followed her flight with his eyes, heart pounding. She disappeared toward the cliffs. 3 days later, while chopping firewood, he heard it, a piercing, echoing call from above. He looked up to see the golden eagle circling with 3 young fledglings close behind. For a moment, they hovered over the cabin, wings flashing gold in the sun, then they were gone, back into the wild where they belonged. Matthew never saw her again. But every stormy morning after that, when the wind roared across the ridges, he swore he could hear the faint whistle of an eagle somewhere high above, and he liked to think she remembered him.